Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Whisper Zone. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. The first time I heard my dead wife's voice calling from the woods, I knew something was terribly wrong in Redwood National Park. My name is Marcus Reynolds, and I've seen things in these ancient forests that no one would believe. But I have to tell this story. Someone needs to know what's hiding in the shadows of the world's tallest trees. 2 years ago, after losing Sarah to cancer, I couldn't stand being around people anymore. Their sad looks, their awkward attempts to comfort me. It was all too much. That's why I took the job as a park ranger here. Where better to hide from the world than among giants that have stood silent for thousands of years? The trees here, they're different from anything you've ever seen. Most days, their massive trunks disappear into a thick blanket of fog that never seems to lift. Even at noon, the forest floor stays in twilight. The branches hundreds of feet above block out most of the sunlight. The constant moisture feeds a carpet of bright green moss that covers everything, making your footsteps silent as a ghost. I thought I knew what isolation felt like in the Marine Corps, back when I was a scout sniper. But this forest, it has its own kind of loneliness, a living, breathing kind of quiet that gets under your skin. My small ranger cabin sits in a clearing surrounded by these ancient guardians. Some of the fallen logs create natural bridges over creeks and ravines, while others have hollowed out into tunnels big enough to walk through. The stumps from trees cut down 100 years ago are wider than my entire cabin. It's like living in a world built for giants. But it wasn't until last week when we found those 3 hikers that I realized something was seriously wrong here. The morning had started hot, must have been close to 80 degrees. I was doing my usual patrol when my radio crackled. Jack Murphy, my partner, was calling in a code 3. Emergency. I still remember every detail of that scene. 3 young hikers, probably college students, lying perfectly still on the trail. At first I thought they were just unconscious, but when I touched them, their skin was hard as ice, frozen solid. In the middle of summer, that's when I noticed the marks on the trees around them. Deep gouges in the bark, too high up for any normal animal to reach. They looked like antler marks, but wrong somehow. And the air, it was suddenly cold enough to see my breath. Later that day, an elder from the local tribe came to my cabin. I'll never forget the look in his eyes when I described what I'd found. He called it the hunger that walks, said there were warnings about this place, carved in stone by his ancestors, warnings I should have heeded. Now, sitting in my cabin as the fog rolls in and the temperature drops, I can hear things moving in the darkness. Things that shouldn't be here. And sometimes when the wind blows just right, I hear Sarah's voice calling my name from deep in the woods. But Sarah is dead, and whatever's using her voice, it's getting closer. The next morning I woke up to a strange silence. Usually you can hear birds singing, squirrels chattering, and the wind rustling through the trees. But there was nothing, just dead quiet. Grabbed my radio and flashlight and headed out for my morning patrol. Something felt off. All the animals seemed to have disappeared. No deer tracks, no rabbit droppings, not even the tiny prints of mice in the mud. It was like every living thing had packed up and left overnight. The fog was thicker than usual, wrapping around the giant redwoods like ghostly fingers. As I walked deeper into the forest, I noticed the temperature dropping. My breath came out, in white puffs, even though it was supposed to be a warm day. That's when I saw the first warning sign. On one of the oldest trees, about 8 feet up, there were these weird marks in the bark. They looked like someone, or something, had dragged massive antlers across it, leaving deep scratches that seemed to frost over as I watched. I reached out to touch one of the marks and pulled my hand back quickly. The bark around it was ice cold. My radio crackled, making me jump. Through the static, I heard Jack's voice. "Marcus, you need to see this. I'm by the old creek near Hunter's Point. I found Jack standing next to an old stump, looking pale. He pointed to something behind it, his hand shaking slightly. "I've been a ranger for 15 years, he whispered. "I've never seen anything like this." There, half hidden by ferns, was a deer, or what was left of it. The strange thing wasn't that it was dead. We see dead animals all the time. It was how it died. The deer was frozen solid, with frost patterns spiraling across its fur. Parts of it looked eaten, but the bite marks were huge, bigger than any predator I knew lived in these woods. "We should talk to Samuel," Jack said quietly. Samuel was one of the tribal elders who lived near the park. If anyone knew what was going on, it would be him. We found Samuel in his small house at the edge of the reservation. When we told him about the frozen deer and the marks on the trees, his face grew serious. He got up slowly and walked to an old chest in the corner. From it, he pulled out what looked like an ancient piece of leather with paintings on it. "Our people have known about this creature for generations," he said, spreading the leather on his table. "We call it the hunger that walks. It comes when the world forgets the old warnings." The paintings showed a tall, skeletal figure with huge antlers. Around it were smaller figures, people, lying on the ground with what looked like frost covering them, just like the hikers we'd found. "It is drawn to pain," Samuel continued, looking straight at me. "To grief, to those who carry deep sadness." His eyes seemed to look right through me, like the sadness you carry for your wife. That's when my radio came to life again. Through bursts of static, I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was Sarah's voice, calling my name from somewhere in the forest. But Sarah had been dead for 2 years. Jack heard it too. His face went white. "Marcus, what the hell was that?" Samuel grabbed my arm. "Do not answer if it calls, no matter whose voice it uses. The Wendigo." He paused, looking out his window at the darkening forest. "It hunts by stealing the voices of those we've lost." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Outside, the fog grew thicker, and somewhere in the distance, I heard what sounded like antlers scraping against wood. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every little sound made me jump. The creaking of trees, the wind whistling through my cabin's windows, the soft thud of pine cones falling on the roof. I kept thinking about what Samuel had said about the Wendigo. Around midnight, my radio crackled. "Marcus," it was Jack. "I'm checking out some strange noises near Cave Creek, probably just teenagers, but..." There was a pause. "Could use some backup." I grabbed my gear and headed out. The moon was full, but the fog was so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. My flashlight beam just bounced back off the white mist, making it harder to see. As I got closer to Cave Creek, the temperature started dropping fast. My fingers went numb, even through my gloves. Frost started forming on my jacket. In the middle of summer. "Jack?" I called into my radio. "What's your location?" Static was the only answer. That's when I found the cave. I'd passed by it hundreds of times on patrol, but I'd never gone inside. Now there was something different about it. Frost patterns covered the rocks around the entrance, spreading like spider webs. "Jack?" I called out again. A voice answered, but it wasn't Jack's. It was Sarah's voice, coming from deep inside the cave. "Marcus, I've been waiting for you." My heart nearly stopped. Part of me, the part that still missed her so much, it hurt, wanted to run toward that voice. But I remembered Samuel's warning. I shined my flashlight into the cave. The beam caught something on the walls that made me forget about the cold. There were paintings everywhere, ancient ones done in red ochre. They showed the same creature from Samuel's leather scroll, but there was more. The paintings told a story. They showed the Wendigo hunting, using the voices of loved ones to lure people. They showed it freezing its victims, storing them like food. And they showed something else, the creature marking certain families, hunting them through generations. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around and saw something that shouldn't be possible. A figure stood between 2 redwoods, so tall it had to bend down to look at me. Its skin was gray and stretched tight over bones, like something that had starved to death but kept moving. Huge antlers rose from its head, tangled with moss and vines. But its eyes, they glowed with an icy blue light that seemed to freeze the air around it. My radio burst to life. Jack's voice came through, but something was wrong. He was screaming. The creature's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing teeth like icicles. Then it moved, faster than anything that big should be able to move. 1 second it was there, the next it was just gone. "Jack!" I yelled into the radio. "Jack, where are you?" His screams cut off suddenly. The radio went dead. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran as fast as I could through the fog, following the trail back to where I'd last seen Jack's truck. The cold followed me, turning puddles to ice under my feet, making the tree branches crack and snap from sudden freezing. I found Jack's truck parked near an old trail marker. The windows were covered in thick frost. From the inside, "Jack?" My voice shook as I approached the truck. He was there in the driver's seat, standing perfectly straight like he was at attention. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. His skin was covered in swirling patterns of frost. He looked like the hikers we'd found, frozen solid from the inside out. I tried to open the door, but my hand stuck to the metal handle. When I pulled it away, it left skin behind. That's when I heard it, a sound like antlers scraping against metal. It came from right behind the truck. I turned slowly. The Wendigo was there watching me. It opened its mouth, and Jack's voice came out. "Marcus, help me." Then it spoke with Sarah's voice. "Why did you let me die alone, Marcus?" The voices hit me like physical blows. I stumbled backward, away from the truck, away from the thing that was using my loved ones' voices like weapons. It followed, moving in that impossible way. There 1 second, gone the next, appearing closer each time. The air got colder and colder until it hurt to breathe. I had one advantage. I knew these woods. I'd spent 2 years walking every trail, learning every landmark. As the creature closed in, I ran for the one place I thought might be safe. The old burial ground Samuel had shown me once. The place his people had marked with protective symbols centuries ago. Behind me, through the fog and freezing air, I heard the Wendigo laugh with Jack's voice. It was playing with me, letting me run. It was hunting me just like it had hunted others from my family before. And somehow, deep down, I knew this wasn't going to end with me escaping. This was just the beginning. I ran until my lungs burned. The old burial ground wasn't far now, but the cold was getting worse. Each breath felt like swallowing ice. Behind me, trees kept cracking and splitting as the Wendigo's presence froze them from the inside out. Flashlights started flickering. The cold was killing the batteries. In the dying light, I saw frost crawling up the handle toward my glove. I dropped it just before the metal became cold enough to stick to my skin. Then my pistol jammed. The metal had gotten so cold that the parts were freezing together. When I tried to pull the trigger, it shattered in my hands like it was made of glass. I'd never seen anything like it. "Marcus." Sarah's voice floated through the trees. "Why are you running from me?" I tried to ignore it, but then Jack's voice joined in. "Partner, I need your help." More voices started calling. Voices I didn't recognize. Maybe they belonged to the Wendigo's other victims, people it had hunted over the years. They all begged for help, called my name, tried to make me stop running. I kept going, but it was getting harder to move. The cold was seeping into my muscles, making them stiff. Ice crystals were forming on my jacket, my hair, my eyelashes. If I stopped moving even for a minute, I knew I'd end up like Jack. That's when I tripped over something in the dark. I fell hard, the frozen ground knocking the wind out of me. When I rolled over to see what I'd stumbled on, I found myself face to face with Jack. He was standing there, perfectly still, frozen just like he'd been in his truck. But now he was right in the middle of the trail. I knew that was impossible. I'd left his body miles behind. The cold. Jack's frozen face suddenly moved, his blue lips forming words. "It burns, Marcus." I scrambled backward. The Wendigo was playing with me, using Jack's frozen body like a puppet. As I watched, more frozen figures stepped out from behind the trees. The hikers we'd found, still wearing their summer clothes, now covered in frost. They moved like stiff dolls, their frozen joints cracking. The Wendigo appeared behind them, towering over its frozen puppets. In the darkness, its eyes glowed like blue stars. Frost spread out from wherever its feet touched the ground. "Your grandfather ran too," it said, using Sarah's voice, "and his father before him. But they all joined my collection in the end." I pulled myself up and started running again, but I was getting tired. The cold was making it hard to think. Every breath felt like knives in my chest. Through the trees ahead, I saw the stone markers of the burial ground. Old symbols were carved into them, the same ones from the cave paintings. If I could just reach them. Something grabbed my ankle. One of the frozen bodies, a hiker, had caught up to me. Its icy fingers burned through my pants leg. I kicked free, but not before the cold had numbed my entire foot. The Wendigo was getting closer. The air got so cold that the fog started turning into snow, swirling around me in the darkness. The trees groaned and split from the intense freeze. "You can't fight the cold," the creature said, this time using my own voice. "It's in your blood, in your family's blood. We've danced this dance for generations." I was only 50 feet from the burial ground now, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. Ice was forming on my clothes, making them stiff and heavy. My fingers had gone completely numb. The frozen bodies were closing in from all sides. Jack, the hikers, and others I didn't recognize. All of them victims of the Wendigo, preserved in ice, now being used to hunt me. 40 feet to the burial ground. The cold was so intense I could barely move. 30 feet. Ice crystals were forming in my beard. 20 feet. My legs were starting to freeze. The Wendigo suddenly appeared right in front of me, blocking my path. Up close, I could see that its antlers were decorated with small bones and frozen pieces of cloth, trophies from its victims. Its breath came out like Arctic wind, carrying the smell of winter and death. "Your wife died slowly," it said in Sarah's voice. "Afraid and alone. Join my collection and you'll never be alone again." I tried to step backward, but my legs wouldn't move. Ice was creeping up from the ground, freezing my boots in place. The frozen bodies of the Wendigo's victims formed a circle around me, watching with their frost-covered eyes. The creature reached for me with its long gray fingers. Where they touched my jacket, the fabric instantly froze and cracked. I knew I had only seconds before I joined Jack and the others as another frozen puppet in the Wendigo's collection. But I also knew something the creature didn't. Something Samuel had told me about the burial ground that was now just 15 feet away. If I could just break free from the ice. If I could move just a few more steps. But first, I had to face the most horrifying test of all. Looking into the Wendigo's eyes as it tried to freeze me from the inside out. Looking into the Wendigo's eyes was like staring into an endless winter. The cold crept through my body, turning my blood to ice. But in those frozen depths, I saw something that made my heart skip. Memories. Not my memories, but my family's. I saw my grandfather as a young man, running through these same woods. I saw his father before him, facing the same creature, generation after generation of my family, all ending up in the Wendigo's icy collection. Now I understood why my dad had warned me never to take a job in these woods. The ice was up to my knees now, and I could feel the cold creeping into my chest. But the memories gave me an idea. If the Wendigo was connected to my family, maybe I could use that connection against it. "Sarah wouldn't want this," I said through chattering teeth. She fought until the end. She never gave up. The Wendigo's grip loosened slightly. I saw confusion in its ancient eyes. "And Jack," I continued, "he was a good man. He deserved better than being your puppet." The frozen bodies around us shifted uneasily. I could feel the Wendigo's power over them wavering. That's when I saw it. A small pouch hanging from Jack's frozen belt. Inside was the emergency fire starter he always carried. If I could just reach it, the Wendigo sensed my plan. It roared with a sound like breaking glaciers, and the cold intensified. Ice crystals formed in the air around us, sharp as needles. The frozen bodies moved closer, their icy fingers reaching for me. But they were moving slower now. My words had shaken the Wendigo's control over them. I forced myself to think about Sarah, not about her voice that the Wendigo stole, but about her real voice. The way she laughed, the way she never gave up during her illness, the warmth of her love. The ice around my legs cracked a little. The Wendigo hissed, "Your warmth cannot save you. The cold is eternal." "No," I said. "The cold only lasts until spring." I lunged forward suddenly, ignoring the pain as frozen skin cracked and bled. My fingers closed around Jack's fire starter. The Wendigo tried to knock it away, but its hand passed through empty air. I had learned its trick of moving fast when it was desperate. The creature screamed with all its stolen voices at once. The sound was horrible, like 100 people crying out in fear and pain. But I noticed something behind all those voices. I heard its real voice. It sounded old and afraid. I hit the fire starter hard against my belt buckle. Sparks flew, catching on my frozen jacket. For a moment I was afraid the ice would snuff them out. But then I remembered what Samuel had told me about the burial ground. It was a place of power, where the old magic still worked. The sparks caught, spreading faster than natural fire should. The Wendigo backed away, pulling its frozen puppets with it. The heat wasn't much, but it was enough to help me break free from the ice. I stumbled the last few feet to the burial ground. As soon as I crossed the line of carved stones, I felt something change in the air. The cold wasn't as bitter here. The old symbols on the stones began to glow faintly, like they were coming alive. The Wendigo paced around the edge of the burial ground, its army of frozen victims moving with it. Couldn't cross the boundary. The symbols kept it out. But I knew I couldn't stay here forever. That's when I noticed something about the frozen bodies. Every time they got close to the burial ground's boundary, the ice covering them cracked a little. The ancient magic was trying to free them. "They're not yours to keep," I told the Wendigo. "They deserve to rest." The creature laughed with Sarah's voice, but the sound was weaker now. "They belong to the cold, just like you will." "No," I said. "They belong to the earth, to the spring, to the warm ground that's waiting for them." I picked up one of the fallen branches inside the burial ground. It was dry, protected from the Wendigo's ice by the old magic. Using Jack's fire starter, I set it ablaze. The Wendigo's eyes widened. It remembered this fire, the same kind my grandfather had used and his father before him. Sacred fire, blessed by generations of tribal elders. "Your hunger ends tonight," I said, holding the burning branch like a torch. But the Wendigo had one last trick to play. It turned to Jack's frozen body and seemed to pour its power into him. Jack's eyes began to glow with that same icy blue light. "Partner," Jack's voice said, sounding almost normal. "You wouldn't hurt me, would you?" He stepped forward, ice cracking. With each movement, behind him, the other frozen victims began to move too, spreading out to surround the burial ground. I gripped the burning branch tighter, knowing that the hardest part of the battle was still to come. I would have to fight my way through my own friend to reach the Wendigo. And somewhere in the darkness, Sarah's voice began to sing the lullaby she used to sing to me when I couldn't sleep. Jack's frozen body stepped closer to the burial ground's edge. Every movement made crackling sounds like someone walking on thin ice. Behind him, the other frozen victims moved forward too, their faces blank except for their glowing blue eyes. "Remember that camping trip last summer?" Jack's voice. "Do we forget when we got lost and had to share that last candy bar?" He sounded so real, so much like my friend. "You can't burn me, Marcus, not after everything we've been through." The Wendigo stood behind its frozen army, watching with those ancient eyes. It thought it had found my weakness, that I couldn't hurt my friend even to save myself. But the Wendigo didn't understand something about real friendship. "Jack would want me to do this," I said quietly. "He'd want me to set him free." I swung the burning branch in a wide arc, sending sparks flying through the air. Where they touched the frozen bodies, the ice began to melt. The victims stumbled back, except for Jack. He kept coming, fighting through the heat. "I'm sorry, partner," I whispered, and thrust the burning branch forward. The fire touched Jack's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ice covering him began to crack and melt. Steam rose from his body, and the blue glow in his eyes flickered. The Wendigo screamed in rage. It tried to maintain its control over Jack, but the sacred fire was too strong. The ice melted faster, and underneath, I could see Jack's real face one last time. He looked peaceful, like he was finally able to rest. "Thank you," he whispered in his own voice, not the Wendigo's copy. Then his frozen body collapsed into water and steam. The other victims began to fall too, the ice holding them melting away. Each one looked relieved as they were finally freed from their frozen prison. The Wendigo's army was disappearing, returning to the earth where they belonged. Now it was just me and the creature. The Wendigo's rage made the air so cold that my burning branch started to sputter. Frost crept along the wood toward my hands. If the fire went out, I'd have nothing left to fight with. That's when Sarah's lullaby started again, soft and sweet in the frozen air. The Wendigo was using its strongest weapon, the voice of the person I loved most. For a moment, my hand holding the branch trembled, but this time the creature's trick backfired, because hearing Sarah's voice reminded me of something she told me in her final days. Love isn't about holding on forever. Sometimes it's about knowing when to let go. I stepped out of the burial ground's protection. The Wendigo lunged forward, thinking it had won. Its icy claws reached for me, ready to add me to its new collection. But I was ready. I dropped and rolled under its reach, just like I'd learned in the Marines. The burning branch caught its leg, and for the first time, I heard the Wendigo's true voice, a howl of pain that shook icicles from the trees. It tried to back away, but I pressed forward. Every time its claws came at me, I dodged and struck with the fire. Each hit melted away pieces of its frozen flesh, but the cold was still seeping into my body, making my movement slower. I knew I had to end this fast. The Wendigo reared up to its full height, desperate now. "You'll die alone," it snarled with Sarah's voice, just like she did. "She didn't die alone," I said. "I was with her, holding her hand. Something you'll never understand." I threw the burning branch straight at its chest. At the same time, the Wendigo's claws caught my left arm. Intense cold shot through my body, freezing my arms solid in seconds. But my throw hit home. The branch stuck in the Wendigo's chest and caught fire. The creature tried to pull it out, but the sacred flame spread too quickly. Ice turned to steam. Flesh melted away, and those ancient eyes finally showed real fear. The Wendigo tried to scream, but all its stolen voices were gone. As it burned, the temperature in the forest began to rise. My frozen arm cracked and shattered below the elbow, but I barely felt it. I was watching the creature that had haunted my family for generations finally disappear. When it was over, all that was left was a patch of steaming ground and a deep silence. I made my way back to Samuel's house, cradling what was left of my arm. He was waiting on his porch like he'd known what would happen. "The voices?" he asked. "Gone," I said. "All of them." He nodded and helped me inside to treat my arm. Later we went back to the forest with others from his tribe. They performed the ancient cleansing ritual, blessing the ground where each frozen victim had fallen. We never found the Wendigo's remains, but the forest felt different now, warmer, more alive. I still work as a ranger here. Some might think I'm crazy to stay, but I understand now why I need to. The Wendigo might be gone, but the forest still needs protectors, people who know the old stories and can recognize the warning signs. Sometimes on cold nights when the fog rolls in thick, I think I hear voices calling from among the ancient pines. But they're just echoes now. Memories, carried on the wind, and when I hear them, I touch the empty sleeve where my left arm used to be, and I remember that some sacrifices are worth making to keep the darkness at bay, because in the end, that's what my family has always done. We stand guard in the ancient woods, making sure some hungers stay forever hungry. The day I first saw death in the mist started like any other rainy morning in Olympic National Park. I never thought that answering a routine radio call would change my life forever. My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm a park ranger here in one of the most beautiful, and now I know most dangerous places in Washington state. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs earlier. The strange silence in the forest, the way the mist moved against the wind, the animals that seemed to vanish into thin air. But let me start from the beginning. Ranger Hayes, come in. We've lost contact with Dr. Morrison's research team. Last known location near Cedar Creek. Over. I grabbed my radio, already reaching for my rain jacket. Copy that. On my way to check it out. Over. As I drove my patrol truck along the winding forest road, the fog grew thicker than I'd ever seen it. 20 years of studying weather patterns as an environmental scientist, and 3 years as a ranger here. Nothing prepared me for what was coming. The research team had been studying moss patterns in our ancient forest. Simple, safe work. They should have checked in last night, but in these mountains, radio problems weren't unusual. Still, something felt wrong. The forest felt wrong. I parked at the Cedar Creek trailhead and stepped out into the mist. The usual sounds of the rainforest, dripping water, birdsong, the rustle of small animals, were missing. The silence pressed against my ears like cotton wool. My boots squished on the wet ground as I followed the trail. The massive trees around me disappeared into the fog just 30 feet up, their trunks covered in thick green moss. Under normal circumstances, this was my favorite kind of day. The mist made everything magical, turning our temperate rainforest into something from a fairy tale. But not today. Today, the magic felt dark. I found the first sign something was wrong about a mile in. A digital camera lying in the mud. When I picked it up, the screen was dead. Strange, because these research-grade cameras were built to handle the rain. I put it in my pack and kept going. The research camp should have been just ahead. 4 tents, 8 researchers, probably huddled, around their camp stove drinking coffee and cursing their broken radio. That's what I told myself. Instead, I found a nightmare. The tents were there, but they were empty. Sleeping bags still laid out. Coffee cups half full, now cold. Laptops open. On the folding table, screens black. Looked like everyone had just vanished. But that wasn't the worst part. Near one of the tents, I found something that made my blood run cold. A small deer lay on the ground, but it wasn't like any dead deer I'd ever seen. Its body was completely dried out like a mummy, its skin pulled tight against its bones. There wasn't a mark on it, no sign of what had killed it. I'd seen mountain lion kills, bear attacks, and all sorts of natural death in my years here. This wasn't natural. My radio crackled, making me jump. Through the static, I heard something that might have been a voice. But when I tried to respond, there was only silence. That's when I noticed the fog was moving, not drifting with the wind like normal fog. This fog was swirling, gathering, like it had a mind of its own. And in the swirling patterns, I could have sworn I saw faces. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding. 20 years of scientific training told me this was impossible. But deep in my gut, where instinct lives, I knew I was seeing something that shouldn't exist. The mist reached for me like fingers. I ran. Back at my truck, I called for backup. James Weber, my partner and the only person here I truly trusted, answered immediately. Hayes, what's wrong? James, get up here, now, and bring every flashlight you can find. I didn't tell him about the moving mist or the mummified deer. How could I? But as I sat in my truck, watching the fog press against my windows, I remembered something. A warning from Billy Blackhawk, one of the tribal elders who sometimes shared stories about these forests. Some things, he'd told me once, are better left undisturbed. The old ones still walk in the mist. I'd smiled politely then, filing it away as interesting local folklore. Now, watching shadows move in the fog where no shadows should be, I wasn't smiling anymore. Whatever was out there in the mist had taken 8 people. And somehow, I knew this was just the beginning. James arrived just as the sun was starting to set. his truck loaded with flashlights, emergency supplies, and our best radio equipment. One look at my face and he knew something was seriously wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, handing me a fresh flashlight and checking his own gear. If only he knew how close to the truth he was. "The research team is gone," I told him, keeping my voice steady. "Just gone, and James, there's something weird about the fog up here." He raised an eyebrow. "Weird how?" I struggled to find the right words. "How do you tell your practical, no-nonsense partner that you saw mist moving like it was alive? That you found a deer that looked like it had been dead for 100 years?" Before I could answer, my radio sparked to life. Through waves of static, we heard something that made us both freeze. "Help, please, the mist, it's..." The voice was familiar. Dr. Morrison, the research team leader. James was already moving, checking the signal strength. "That's coming from the North Ridge, about a mile from here." "James, wait." I grabbed his arm. "We need to be smart about this. Let me show you what I found at their camp first." We walked back to the abandoned campsite together, our flashlight beams cutting through the growing darkness. The mist seemed thicker now, if that was possible. It curled around our legs like water. The camp was exactly as I'd left it, but somehow even creepier in the fading light. James methodically photographed everything with his phone while I explained what I'd found earlier. When I showed him the mummified deer, he went quiet. James had been a ranger for 15 years. He knew this wasn't normal. "We should call this in," he said finally. "Get a search and rescue team up here." That's when we heard the scream. It came from somewhere in the fog, echoing off the trees in a way that made it impossible to tell which direction it came from. It sounded like Dr. Morrison again, but wrong. Like someone trying to copy her voice but not quite getting it right. James pulled out his compass and swore. The needle was spinning wildly. "That's impossible," he muttered. All our equipment was starting to go haywire. Our phones showed no signal. The radios just gave a static. Then we saw the symbols. They appeared in the mist like someone was drawing them with a finger on foggy glass. Strange, swirling shapes that seemed to glow faintly. I recognized some of them from the petroglyphs, the old tribal caves, but others were completely foreign. "We need to talk to Billy," I said. Billy Blackhawk was the oldest member of the tribal council, and he knew these forests better than anyone. He warned me about something like this, but I didn't listen. James nodded slowly, still staring at the symbols. "Okay, but first we need..." So he never finished that sentence. The mist between us suddenly thickened, forming a wall that cut us off from each other. I heard James shout my name, and I tried to run toward his voice. But the fog was everywhere, dense and cold and somehow solid. "James," I yelled. "Stay where you are, I'm coming to you." His answer came from behind me, "Victoria, over here." But then I heard his voice again from my left. "This way," and again, from my right. "Help me." 3 voices, all exactly like James, all calling from different directions. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I knew somehow that only one of those voices was really James. The others, I didn't want to think about what they might be. I stood completely still, trying to think. The real James would know how we handle emergency situations. We had protocols. "James," I called out. "What's the code?" There was a moment of silence. Then, from somewhere ahead of me, "Red Eagle, Victoria, over here." That was our emergency code. That was the real James. I moved toward his voice, but carefully, testing each step. The mist swirled around me, and in it, I started seeing things. Faces, shapes, things that looked like people but weren't quite right. When I finally reached James, he was pale but steady. "We need to get out of here," he said. "Now." But as we turned to leave, our flashlights caught something that made us both stop breathing for a second. Standing in the mist was Dr. Morrison. She looked normal, except her feet weren't quite touching the ground. And when she smiled at us, her teeth were wrong. All wrong. "Help me," she said in that not quite right voice. "Please help me." The thing that looked like Dr. Morrison stepped toward us. The mist moved with her, reaching for us like hungry fingers. James grabbed my hand. "Run!" We ran through the forest, jumping over fallen logs, ducking under branches. Behind us, I heard laughter that sounded like breaking glass. The mist chased us, catching at our clothes, trying to trip us. We made it back to our trucks, but we both knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "We need to find Billy," James said, his voice shaking slightly. "Right now." I nodded, starting my engine. But as we pulled away from Cedar Creek, I saw something in my rearview mirror that I'll never forget. The mist had formed into a giant figure, watching us leave. And somehow, I knew it was smiling. Billy Blackhawk's small house sat at the edge of the reservation, surrounded by cedar trees. Even at this late hour, smoke curled from his chimney. As we pulled up, he was already standing on his porch, like he'd been expecting us. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said, his weathered face serious in the porch light. "The spirits are restless tonight." Inside, Billy's house was warm and smelled like wood smoke and sage. While his wife Sarah made us tea, James and I told him everything we'd seen. The mummified deer, the moving mist, the thing that looked like Dr. Morrison but wasn't. Billy listened without interrupting, his dark eyes grave. When we finished, he was quiet for a long time. "The old stories," he finally said, "tell of a being that walks in the mist. Our people called it the shadow stealer. It sleeps for many years, then wakes when it's disturbed." "Disturbed by what?" I asked, my hands tight around my teacup. "By those who don't respect the sacred places," Billy said. "Your research team, they were digging near Cedar Creek?" James nodded. "Taking soil samples, studying the moss patterns." Billy's face darkened. "Cedar Creek is a power place. The old burial grounds are there. Some things should not be disturbed." Before he could say more, my radio crackled. Through the static, we heard screaming. This time, it wasn't Dr. Morrison's voice. It was James's. But James was sitting right next to me. We all stared at the radio as James's voice begged for help, called my name, screamed in pain. The real James looked sick. "It's learning," Billy said softly. "Getting stronger, taking more shapes." "How do we stop it?" I asked. "Fire," Billy said. "The old stories say it fears fire. But be careful, it's clever. It will try to trick you, use your memories against you. And whatever you do, don't let it touch you." That's when all the lights went out. Not just in Billy's house, everywhere. The whole reservation, the nearby town, everything went dark at once. Only the fire in Billy's fireplace still burned. Through the windows we could see the mist rolling in, thick and wrong, glowing faintly with its own light. "It followed us," James whispered. Billy moved faster than I would have thought possible for his age. He grabbed bundles of sage from his shelves, lit them from his fire. "Take these," he said, handing them to us. "They won't stop it, but they'll help you see through its tricks." We heard cars starting outside, people shouting. Red and blue lights flashed through the mist. Police cars and emergency vehicles. "The government team is here," James said. "I called them before we left Cedar Creek." My stomach twisted. Something told me that bringing in more people was exactly what we didn't need. Billy grabbed my arm. "Victoria, listen carefully. The Shadow Stealer is protecting something important. You must understand why before you try to stop. Do you promise me?" I promised. But at that moment, the windows exploded inward. The mist poured into the house like water. We ran outside, but things weren't any better there. The fog was everywhere, and in it, shapes moved. People shapes. Dozens of them. Through the chaos, I saw government vehicles, black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in dark uniforms were setting up equipment, scientific-looking stuff, but also what looked like weapons. "They're going to make things worse," Billy said. "They don't understand what they're dealing with." That's when I saw it, the thing I'll never forget. In the middle of the street, the mist gathered and formed into a perfect copy of me, but wrong. Its eyes were empty, its smile too wide. It raised its hand and pointed at us. All around us, the mist people turned to look. "Run!" James grabbed my arm. "Get to the trucks!" We ran, but the mist was faster. It caught up to James first. I heard him yell and turned to see him surrounded by fog that moved like tentacles. "James!" I ran back toward him, but Billy caught my arm. "Wait," he said. "Look carefully." I forced myself to stop, to really look. That's when I noticed. There were two Jameses. One reaching for me, one trapped in the mist. They looked exactly the same. The one reaching for me smiled, just like Dr. Morrison had smiled, with teeth that were all wrong. I backed away. The fake James's face twisted into something horrible. The real James broke free from the mist and ran toward us. "The sage!" he yelled. "Use the sage!" I thrust my burning sage bundle toward the creature. It hissed, an awful sound like steam from a broken pipe, and backed away. We made it to my truck, all three of us. As we drove away, I saw the government team in my rearview mirror. They were setting up bright lights and what looked like some kind of containment equipment. "They think they can capture it," Billy said, shaking his head. "They don't understand. The Shadow Stealer isn't just a creature. It's part of this land, and it's angry." In the back seat, James was quiet, staring at his hands. "It felt me," he said finally. "When it had me in the mist, it was looking for something. In my head." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What do we do now?" "We go back to Cedar Creek," Billy said. "To the burial grounds. You need to see what it's protecting, then you'll understand." As we drove through the dark mountains, the mist followed us like a hungry animal. And somewhere in that mist, things that wore our faces were smiling. The night was far from over. The drive back to Cedar Creek was the longest 20 minutes of my life. The mist stayed with us, dancing at the edges of my headlights, sometimes forming faces that pressed against the windows. In the back seat, James kept rubbing his arms like he couldn't get warm. "Stop here," Billy said suddenly. We were about a quarter mile from where I'd found the research camp. "The burial ground is just ahead, but we need to go on foot. And Victoria," he touched my arm. "Whatever we find, remember, sometimes the land itself has secrets worth keeping." We grabbed our flashlights and the rest of the sage bundles. The night was silent except for our footsteps and the distant sound of helicopters. The government team, probably searching the area from above. Billy led us off the main trail, following marks on the trees that I'd never noticed before. Ancient, symbols carved so long ago they were almost part of the bark. That's when James stumbled. "I don't feel right," he said, his voice shaky. "Ever since it touched me, something's wrong." In the beam of my flashlight, I could see his skin was too pale. His eyes looked glassy. When he breathed out, his breath came out like mist. "It's inside him," Billy said quietly. "The Shadow Stealer's mark." "How do we get it out?" I demanded, grabbing James's arm. He felt cold as ice. "We don't," Billy said. "But James can fight it if he's strong enough." James straightened up, trying to smile. "I'm okay, let's keep going." But I knew my partner. I could see the fear in his eyes. We walked another 10 minutes before Billy stopped at the base of a massive cedar tree. Its trunk was wider than a car, its branches disappearing into the mist above. The ground around it was different, darker, with strange mounds covered in moss. "The burial ground," Billy said. "Look," our flashlight beams revealed what the research team must have found. Parts of the ground had been disturbed, and in the freshly turned earth things gleamed. Not just old bones, but something else. Something that shimmered like starlight. "Crystal formations," I said, my scientist's brain kicking in. "But I've never seen anything like them." "Starstones," Billy corrected. "The old stories say they're pieces of the first light that ever shone on this land. Our ancestors protected them, and now..." A twig snapped behind us. We turned to see men in black tactical gear emerging from the mist, carrying serious-looking equipment. Leading them was a woman in a white lab coat. "Dr. Hayes," she said, smiling professionally. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen from the Advanced Research Division. We've been looking for you." "This is sacred ground," Billy said firmly. "You have no right to be here." Dr. Chen's smile didn't waver. "With all due respect, sir, We have full authority to contain and study any unusual phenomena in this area, especially after what happened to the research team." "What did happen to them?" I asked. "They're dead," James said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. His voice sounded strange, echoing slightly. I can feel it." The mist showed. Dr. Chen's eyes locked onto James with sudden interest. "You've had direct contact with the entity. Fascinating. We'll need to take you in for observation." "He's not going anywhere," I said, stepping in front of my partner. That's when everything went crazy at once. The mist exploded around us, thick and angry. The government team's equipment started sparking and smoking. And James dropped to his knees, crying out in pain. Through the chaos, I saw Dr. Chen shouting orders. Her team was setting up some kind of energy weapon, pointing it at the mist. "Stop," Billy yelled. "You'll make it angry." Too late. The mist gathered into a massive shape like a tower of fog with dozens of faces swirling inside it. The faces of the missing research team, I realized. All of them screaming silently. The government team fired their weapon. A beam of blue light shot through the mist and did nothing. The mist just swallowed it. Then James stood up. But it wasn't James anymore. His eyes were pure white, and when he spoke, his voice was like wind through ancient trees. "You wake the old ones. You disturb their rest. You steal their light." "James, fight it," I yelled. But I could see I was losing him. The thing wearing James's face turned to Dr. Chen. "You want to contain magic? To control it? Foolish children." The mist surged forward. Government agents went flying. Their weapons crumbled to dust. Dr. Chen scrambled backward, her professional calm finally breaking. "Victoria," Billy's voice cut through the chaos. "The Starstones. They're what it's protecting. They're part of it." I looked at the glowing crystals, then at the mist, then at James, my partner, my friend, being consumed by this ancient force. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't about good versus evil. This was about balance, about protecting something precious from people who would abuse it. But understanding didn't tell me what to do next, because now I had to make an impossible choice. Help the government team try to contain this force, or do something that went against everything I believed in as a ranger and protector of this land. The mist rose higher, angry faces swirling in its depths. James, or what used to be James, raised his hands, and the ground began to shake, and I knew whatever I decided next would change everything. Sometimes the biggest choices are the clearest ones. Looking at James, my partner, my friend, being taken over by this ancient force, I knew what I had to do. I reached into my ranger jacket and pulled out my emergency flares. "Everyone get back," I shouted, lighting the first flare. Its bright, red light cut through the mist like a knife. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her face angry. "Ranger Hayes, stand down. That's a priceless scientific discovery." "No," I said firmly. "It's something that belongs to this land, and it's staying here." I threw the burning flare at the government team's equipment. The machine sparked and caught fire. Dr. Chen screamed orders, but her team was already backing away from the growing flames. The thing that was James turned to me, its white eyes glowing. "You understand," it said in that ancient voice. "I do," I answered, "but I want my friend back." The mist swirled around us, and in it, I saw faces. Not just the research team now, but older faces. Hundreds of them. The ancient ones Billy had talked about. "Your friend chose this," the voice said through James. "He carries our power now. He will join us." "No." I lit another flare, holding it high. "You're protecting the Starstones. I get that. But you don't need James to do it. You've got me." Billy stepped forward. "Victoria, wait." "I'm a ranger," I said, keeping my eyes on James. "Protecting this land is my job, my life. Let James go and I'll stay. I'll guard your secrets. No one will disturb this place again." The mist quieted, like it was thinking. Behind me, I could hear Dr. Chen calling for backup on her radio. The fire was spreading through the trees now, creating a circle of light around us. The mist pulled back from the flames, swirling in agitation. That's when James's body started shaking. His eyes flickered between white and their normal brown. "Victoria?" His voice was his own again, just for a moment. "I'm cold. So cold." "Fight it, James." I stepped closer, even though Billy tried to hold me back. "You're stronger than it thinks." The mist roared, a sound like 1,000 whispers at once. It poured into James, making him glow from within. He threw his head back and screamed. I did. The only thing I could think of. I ran forward and hugged him. He was cold as ice, but I held on. "James Weber, you listen to me," I said fiercely. "We've faced down bears together. We've survived avalanches. We've saved lost hikers in the worst storms. You do not get to give up now." The mist tried to pull him away, but I held on tighter. "You're my partner," I said. "My best friend. And whatever this thing is, it can't have you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, James's arms slowly came up and hugged me back. The mist exploded outward with a sound like breaking glass. James collapsed in my arms, but he was warm again. His eyes were his own. That, he said weakly, was not fun. The fire had spread in a perfect circle around the burial ground now, keeping the mist at bay. In the flames, I saw the faces of the ancient ones watching us. Dr. Chen and her team were retreating, their equipment destroyed. "This isn't over," she called back. "We'll return with better containment methods." But I knew they wouldn't, because I'd meant what I said. The mist gathered one last time, forming into a huge figure that looked down at us. When it spoke with 1,000 voices. "You choose to stay, to guard?" "I do," I said. "This is my home too. And I'll protect it, not with weapons or containment fields, but with respect, the way it should be protected." The figure nodded slowly. Then it looked at James. "And you?" James struggled to his feet, leaning on me. "Where my partner goes, I go." Besides, he managed a weak smile. "Somebody's got to help her keep hikers away from here." The figure seemed to smile, not the wrong, twisted smile from before, but something ancient and wise. It began to fade, spreading out into normal-looking mist. But before it disappeared completely, it left us with a warning. "We will be watching. Always watching." Then it was gone. The fire died down by itself, leaving the burial ground untouched. The starstones gleamed softly under the moss, then slowly dimmed until they looked like ordinary crystals. Billy walked over and put his hands on our shoulders. "The old ones have chosen well," he said. "But the power in this place, and it will draw others." "Let them come," I said, looking at the ancient cedar trees and the morning mist that was beginning to form. Normal mist now, just water in the air. "We'll be ready." James nodded, then winced. "But maybe next time, less with the freezing cold and body snatching?" I laughed, even though my eyes were wet. "Deal." We walked back to our trucks as the sun started to rise. Just another morning in Olympic National Park. But now I knew what was really out there in the mist. What had always been out there. Some would call it a monster. Others would call it a miracle. But to me, it was simply part of the land I'd sworn to protect. Another secret of the ancient forest. And as we drove back to Ranger Station, I swear, I saw faces in the morning mist. Smiling, watching, protecting, just like us. The screams always start at sunset. I've been a park ranger at Mesa Verde for 3 years now, and I still can't get used to them. They echo through the ancient cliff dwellings, bouncing off the red canyon walls like they're playing some twisted game of hide-and-seek. Most of my colleagues say it's just the wind or maybe coyotes, but I know better. After 15 years as an FBI agent, I've learned to trust my gut. And my gut tells me something's very wrong here. My name is Rachel Martinez, and I see things other people don't. It started when I was a kid. I'd get these feelings, these glimpses, like watching a movie that only plays in my head. Mom called it a gift. The FBI called it intuition. I just called it a headache and tried to ignore it. But here at Mesa Verde, surrounded by 1,000 years of history and mystery, my gift has gotten stronger than ever. Today started like any other day. Me standing at my cabin window watching the sunrise paint the canyon walls gold. My coffee was still too hot to drink when my radio crackled to life. Rachel, you there? It was Tom Collins, my partner. We've got another missing tourist. That made 3 this month. I grabbed my gear and headed out, my boots crunching on the gravel path. The morning air was crisp, and the massive cliff dwellings loomed above me like sleeping giants. These ancient homes carved right into the rock face have stood here for over 700 years. The ancestral Puebloans built them, lived in them, and then mysteriously abandoned them. Nobody knows why they left, but sometimes when I'm alone here at night, I think I understand. As I walked, I passed the main tourist areas, the round ceremonial rooms called kivas, the carefully preserved living spaces, and the walls covered in petroglyphs. Those ancient rock carvings always catch my eye. There's one that shows a figure that seems to shift and change every time I look at it. The tourists never notice it, but I do. I found Tom near Cliff Palace, the largest cliff dwelling. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. "Morning, Rachel," he said, handing me a photo. James Chen, 25, professional photographer, came to shoot the sunset yesterday. Never made it back to his car. I took the photo, and the moment my fingers touched it, the headache hit. Images flashed through my mind. Darkness, movement in shadows, eyes that weren't human. I must have winced because Tom grabbed my arm. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just need more coffee." But I wasn't okay, because those glimpses I was getting, they were getting stronger. And they were showing me something that shouldn't exist. Something that moved through shadows like they were doorways. Something that could change its shape at will. Something that was hunting in my park. I looked up at the ancient dwellings, their empty windows staring back like hollow eyes. The morning sun caught something metallic near one of the higher windows, probably a tourist's lost camera or water bottle. But as I watched, it moved. Just slightly, like something up there had shifted position. I've dealt with serial killers, tracked down terrorists, and faced things that would give most people nightmares. But nothing in my FBI training prepared me for what was coming. Because sometimes the old stories are true. Sometimes the monsters are real, and sometimes they're hungry. "Tom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I think we need to close the park." He looked at me like I was crazy. "For a missing tourist, Rachel, we can't." "Trust me," I cut him off. "Something's wrong here. Really wrong." As if to prove my point, a shadow passed over us. Too big to be a bird, too silent to be a plane. When we looked up, there was nothing there. But I could have sworn I heard laughter on the wind. The ancient walls of Mesa Verde hold many secrets. I was about to learn them all, whether I wanted to or not. I spent the rest of the morning looking through James Chen's campsite. His tent was still perfectly set up, sleeping bag neatly rolled inside. His camera bag sat next to it, but the expensive camera was missing. A half-drunk bottle of water and an open bag of trail mix lay on a small camping table. Everything looked normal, too normal, like someone had arranged it all just so. That's when I noticed the animals, or rather the lack of them. Mesa Verde is usually full of life. Squirrels darting between rocks, birds singing in the juniper trees, lizards sunning themselves on warm stones. But today there was nothing. The whole area felt empty, like nature itself was holding its breath. "Rachel," Tom's voice made me jump. He was kneeling near the edge of the campsite, waving me over. "You need to see this." I walked over, and my stomach dropped. There, pressed into a patch of soft dirt, was a footprint, but not like any I'd ever seen. It started as what looked like a human print, then seemed to stretch and change, becoming something more like a wolf's paw at the end. "Could be 2 different prints overlapping," Tom suggested, but his voice shook slightly. I shook my head. "Look at the edges. It's one continuous print." I took out my phone to take a picture, but when I looked at the screen, the print wasn't there. I could see it perfectly with my naked eye, but the camera couldn't capture it. That's when the headache hit again, stronger this time. Images flashed through my mind. Moonlight on canyon walls, something dark moving through the shadows, and, most disturbing of all, James Chen's camera, lying broken near one of the ancient kivas. "I know where to look next," I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced myself to stay steady. As we hiked to the kiva, Tom filled me in on what he'd learned. 2 other tourists had gone missing in the past month. Sarah Williams, a college student on a summer trip, and Marco Rodriguez, a retired teacher. Both disappeared around sunset. Both campsites were found exactly like James Chen's, undisturbed, as if they'd just stepped away for a moment. The kiva was a large circular room dug into the ground, used by the ancient Puebloans for ceremonies. A wooden ladder led down into the darkness. As we approached, the air grew colder, despite the warm morning sun. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the wall near the entrance. Among the ancient petroglyphs was a warning symbol I'd never noticed before. It showed a figure that seemed to shift between human and animal shapes, surrounded by smaller symbols that my headache wouldn't let me focus on. "That's weird," Tom said, frowning. "I've worked here for 5 years. That marking wasn't there yesterday." We found James Chen's camera at the bottom of the kiva, just like in my vision. The lens was shattered, but the memory card was intact. Back at the ranger station, we looked through his last photos. Most were normal tourist shots: sunset over the canyons, close-ups of pottery shards, ancient walls glowing in the evening light. Then we came to the last photo. It was dark, blurry, taken at an angle like he'd been running. But there in the corner, barely visible, was a shape. It might have been human, or it might have been a wolf, or maybe both at once. Its eyes caught the camera flash, reflecting back not red like an animal's eyes should, but an impossible glowing blue. That's when my radio crackled with static. Through the white noise, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Words. A language I'd never heard before, but somehow understood perfectly. The old ones return. "The hunt begins." Tom looked at me, his face pale. "Please tell me that was just interference." I was about to answer when we heard it. A long, low howl that couldn't have come from any normal wolf, echoing through the canyons of Mesa Verde. But this time, it wasn't coming from my radio. It was coming from right outside. That night, the nightmares started. I was running through Mesa Verde's canyons in the dark. The moon cast weird shadows on the red rocks, and every shadow seemed to move. Behind me, something was following. Something that wasn't quite human and wasn't quite animal. I could hear its breathing, getting closer and closer. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:33. As I reached for the glass of water beside my bed, I froze. There, on my window, was a handprint. But it started as a human hand and ended in what looked like wolf claws, just like the footprint we'd found earlier. When I blinked, it was gone. The next morning, I found Tom already at the ranger station, looking like he hadn't slept either. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually neat uniform was wrinkled. But it was more than that. Something about him seemed different. "I got a call from Washington," he said, not meeting. "My eyes. Some government people are coming to help with the investigation." "FBI?" I asked, thinking of my old colleagues. "No." Tom's voice sounded flat. "Some other department, they wouldn't say which one." Before I could ask more questions, my head started pounding again. This time, the vision was clearer than ever. A hidden cave deep in the park with walls covered in ancient paintings. In my vision, the paintings seemed to move, telling a story about something old and powerful that lived in these canyons. "Tom," I said, "I need to show you something." We hiked for 2 hours, following the path I'd seen in my vision. Tom was quieter than usual, and he kept stopping to look over his shoulder, like he thought someone was following us. Finally, we found it. A narrow crack in the canyon wall hidden behind a tall juniper tree. Inside, the cave opened up into a big room. Our flashlights showed walls covered in paintings, just like in my vision. They told a story, the ancient. Puebloan people living peacefully, then a dark shape appearing among them. The shape could change from human to animal, and it brought others like it. The final painting showed a group of tribal elders performing some kind of ceremony, trapping the shape changers in the shadows. "Rachel," Tom whispered, his voice shaking. "These paintings, they're fresh, the paint is still wet. He was right. Someone or something had made these paintings recently. As if on cue, our flashlights flickered and died, leaving us in total darkness. That's when we heard the footsteps. They came from deeper in the cave, getting closer. They sounded human at first, then changed to something that clicked on the stone floor like animal claws. Tom grabbed my arm, his fingers ice cold. "We need to get out of here," he said, but his voice sounded wrong, like two voices speaking at once. Just then, a new light appeared at the cave entrance. 3 people in dark suits stood there, silhouetted against the daylight. They wore sunglasses despite the dim light, and had identical blank expressions. "Ranger Martinez," one of them said. "We've been looking for you. We need to discuss the situation in your park." "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're from a special division of the government that handles unusual cases." The speaker smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We've been tracking this entity for a very long time." Tom's grip on my arm tightened painfully. When I looked at him, his eyes seemed to reflect the light like an animal's, just for a second. "The park is closed until further notice," the government agent continued. "We'll handle things from here." But I knew they wouldn't, because right then another vision hit me. These agents weren't here to help. They wanted to capture whatever was in the park, to study it, to use it. And somehow, deep down, I knew that would be a terrible mistake. As if reading my thoughts, Tom suddenly let go of my arm and backed away into the darkness of the cave. When he spoke again, his voice was barely human. "They're coming. The old ones are waking up, and they're hungry." The cave walls seemed to ripple like they were made of water instead of stone. And in those ripples I saw shapes moving. Dozens of them, all with those same glowing blue eyes we'd seen in James Chen's last photo. We weren't dealing with just one skinwalker anymore. We were dealing with a whole pack of them. And somehow, my partner had become one of them. I ran. My flashlight was dead. But somehow I could see in the dark cave, like my eyes had adjusted impossibly fast. Behind me, I heard the government agents shouting, and Tom, or whatever Tom had become, making sounds no human throat should make. I didn't stop running until I reached the cave entrance. The sun was setting, painting the canyon blood red. As I caught my breath, a voice spoke behind me. Tom's voice, but different, deeper. "Rachel." He stepped out of the shadows, but he moved wrong, like his joints weren't quite human anymore. "Don't be afraid. What happened to you?" My voice shook, but I stood my ground. "Where are the missing tourists?" "They're safe." Tom's face flickered like a TV with bad reception. For a second, I saw something else under his familiar features, something ancient and wild. We needed to protect them from those men in suits. The government, they don't understand what this place really is. A cold wind blew through the canyon, carrying whispers in that strange language I somehow understood. The shadows around us grew longer, darker, and in each one I saw eyes gleaming. "What is this place, then?" I asked, trying to keep him talking. My hand inched toward the gun on my hip, though I doubted it would help against whatever Tom had become. "A doorway." Tom smiled, showing teeth that were just a bit too sharp. "The old ones, the skinwalkers, they've guarded these canyons for thousands of years. They protected the balance between our world and theirs. But now, what? Now the government wants to use us as weapons." His voice turned bitter. "They've been hunting us, studying us, trying to control us. That's why we had to wake up, had to start changing people again. We need guardians on both sides." My head was pounding worse than ever. Images flashed through my mind, ancient ceremonies. In the kivas, people shifting between human and animal forms and something else. A choice. A destiny. "That's why you've been having the visions, Rachel." Tom took a step closer. "You're like me. You have the old blood in you. You just don't know it yet." Suddenly, the government agents burst out of the cave behind us. They had weird-looking guns that hummed with electricity. "Step away from her," one agent ordered. "This situation is contained," Tom growled. An actual growl that made the ground shake. The shadows around us came alive, and out of them stepped the missing tourists. But they weren't tourists anymore. Like Tom, they moved with an animal grace, their eyes glowing that impossible blue. "Rachel," Tom said urgently, "you have to choose. Now. Help them cage us, study us, turn us into weapons, or become what you were always meant to be. A protector. A guardian." The agents raised their guns. The skinwalkers tensed to attack. And there I stood in the middle, my head full of ancient memories that didn't belong to me. As the sun sank below, the canyon rim, that's when I saw it, the truth behind everything. In my mind's eye, I watched my grandmother, who I'd barely known, dancing in a ceremony very like the ones shown in the cave paintings. I saw her eyes glow that same blue. I understood why I'd always had the visions, why I'd always felt drawn to this place. "Time to choose, Rachel," Tom said softly. "Sun's almost down." The agents started shooting, their electric guns buzzing. The skinwalkers moved like living shadows, too fast to follow. And I made my choice. As the last ray of sunlight disappeared, I felt something stir inside me, something old and wild and powerful. My bones began to shift, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly awake. The hunt was about to begin. But this time, I wouldn't be the prey. I would be the hunter. The change didn't hurt like I thought it would. It felt like waking up from a long sleep, like finally becoming who I was always supposed to be. My senses sharpened. I could smell the ancient dust in the canyon, hear heartbeats from yards away, see every detail in the darkness like it was, bright as day. The government agents backed away, their faces showing real fear for the first time. I caught my reflection in one of their dark sunglasses. My eyes glowed that same impossible blue, and my shape seemed to flow between human and wolf, never quite settling on either. "Stand down," the lead agent ordered, but his voice shook. "We have containment protocols." Tom's laugh cut him off. "Your protocols won't work here. This is our place, our territory." The other skinwalkers, the missing tourists, moved to stand beside us. They weren't victims anymore. They were pack. Sarah Williams, the college student, now moved like a mountain lion. Marco Rodriguez, the retired teacher, had the strength of a bear in his steps. James Chen's photographer's eye had become the sharp gaze of an eagle. But the agents weren't giving up. They pulled out new weapons, silver chains that crackled with electricity, guns loaded with darts full of glowing blue liquid. "Last chance," the lead agent said. "Come quietly or we'll take you by force. Think of what we could learn from you. The power we could..." A howl cut through the night, but this time it wasn't from any of us. It came from deep within the canyon, ancient and powerful. The cave paintings we'd seen earlier hadn't told the whole story. There were more of the old ones, the original skinwalkers, and they were waking up. The agents opened fire. The darts flew at us, but we moved like shadows, too fast to hit. Tom leaped forward, changing from human to wolf to something in between, knocking two agents down. I found myself moving without thinking, my body knowing things my mind never learned. But one dart caught Tom in the shoulder. He stumbled, his form flickering like bad TV reception again. The blue liquid was some kind of poison, trying to lock him in human form. "Tom!" I ran to him, dodging more darts. Inside me, the old blood sang with power, and somehow I knew what to do. I pressed my hand to his shoulder, letting the ancient magic flow through me into him. The poison sizzled and evaporated. The lead agent spoke into his radio. "Send in the containment unit. Full. Lockdown." We heard helicopters in the distance, but we also heard something else. The sound of many feet and paws approaching through the canyon shadows. The old ones were coming. "Rachel," Tom said urgently, "we need to get to the main kiva, the sacred one. There's a ceremony that can seal the canyon, keep them out forever. But what? It requires a sacrifice. Someone with the old blood has to give up their power, their life force to power the barrier." The helicopters were getting closer. The agents were regrouping. And somewhere in the darkness, the ancient skinwalkers were approaching. And I suddenly understood they weren't all friendly. Some of them had been locked away for a reason. I looked at Tom, at the other changed tourists, at the agents with their silver chains and poison darts. I thought about my grandmother, about the power in my blood, about choices and sacrifices and what it really means to protect something. "Show me," I said. Tom's eyes widened. "Rachel, no. I didn't mean you should. Show me how to do the ceremony. Now." The helicopters appeared over the canyon rim, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. The agents raised their weapons, and from the shadows stepped the ancient skinwalkers. Dozens of them, some beautiful, some terrifying, all powerful beyond imagination. The final battle for Mesa Verde was about to begin. We ran through the darkness toward the main kiva, the Yao, sacred ceremonial chamber. Helicopter spotlights swept the canyon like giant flashlights, but they couldn't quite catch us. Behind us, I heard the agents shouting and the ancient skinwalkers moving through the shadows. Not all the old ones were on our side. Some had been trapped here for good reason. They were the ones who had lost their humanity completely, who saw humans only as prey. I could feel them getting closer, their hunger reaching out like cold fingers. "Here." Tom pulled me toward the kiva's entrance. The wooden ladder led down into darkness, but my new eyes could see every detail of the ancient room below. As we climbed down, I heard Sarah scream. One of the dark skinwalkers had caught her, its form twisted and wrong, like a nightmare come to life. Without thinking, I leaped back up and launched myself at the creature. We rolled across the ground, its claws scraping against my skin, but my blood was strong too. I fought back with power I didn't know I had, forcing it away from Sarah. "Rachel!" Tom's voice snapped me back. "The ceremony! We have to start now!" The agents were setting up some kind of energy barrier around the kiva. The helicopters hovered overhead, dropping more agents on ropes. And through it all came the ancient skinwalkers, both the good and the bad, light and dark, locked in their own battle that had lasted centuries. I jumped back down into the kiva. Tom had lit ancient eye, lamps around the circular room, their light reflecting off the carved walls. In the center was a small fire pit. "What do I do?" I asked. Tom's face was grim. "The fire has to be fed with power, with life force, a willing sacrifice of the old blood. It will create a barrier that seals away the dark ones forever, but whoever does it won't survive." He nodded. Above us, the battle raged. I heard James Chen cry out in pain, heard Marco Rodriguez roaring as he fought in his bear form. The dark skinwalkers were winning. "I'll do it," Tom said, stepping toward the fire pit. "No." I grabbed his arm. "It has to be me. Rachel, I'm newer to this power. You know how to lead the others, how to keep the balance." I smiled at him. Besides, I was getting tired of writing incident reports. A crash from above. The agents had broken through. Dark skinwalkers poured into the kiva, their twisted forms making the shadows writhe. The good skinwalkers fought them back, but they were outnumbered. I knew what I had to do. I stepped into the fire pit. The flames didn't burn, they felt warm, welcoming. I thought of my grandmother, of the power she'd passed down to me. I thought of Mesa Verde, of all the history and magic in these ancient walls. "Protect them," I told Tom. "Protect this place." Then I reached deep inside, to where the old blood sang in my veins, and I let go. Let all that power flow out of me, and into the fire. The flames turned blue, then white, rising higher and higher. I heard Tom chanting in that ancient language, heard the dark skinwalkers screaming as the light touched them, felt the power building. Then everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I was different. Not human anymore, but not quite a spirit either. I could see everything in the canyon. Every shadow, every hidden cave, every ancient secret. I was part of Mesa Verde now, bound to it forever. The dark skinwalkers were gone, sealed away in their shadow realm. The agents had been forced out, by power they couldn't understand or control. The good skinwalkers remained as guardians, led by Tom, protecting the balance between worlds. And me, I became something new. A watcher, a protector. When the sun sets over Mesa Verde and the shadows grow long, I'm there. When lost hikers need to find their way home, I guide them. When the boundary between worlds grows thin, I guard it. Sometimes, on quiet nights, visitors to the park say they see a strange light moving through the canyon. Sometimes they hear a wolf's howl that sounds almost human. And sometimes, if they're very lucky, they catch a glimpse of a figure that's neither woman nor wolf, but something in between. The tourists have started coming back to Mesa Verde. Tom and the others watch over them, keeping their own secret. The government men never returned. And the dark skinwalkers? They're still out there in the shadows, but they can't break through. Not while I'm here. I miss being human sometimes. Miss my morning coffee and my ranger badge and the simple life I used to have. But when I see the sunset paint the canyon walls gold, when I feel the ancient power flowing through this sacred place, I know I made the right choice. My name is Rachel Martinez. I used to be a park ranger. Now I am Mesa Verde's guardian spirit, and the shadows don't scare me anymore. The day I saw the blue lights in the sky above Mount Rainier, I knew something wasn't right. 23 years as a park ranger, and I'd never seen anything like it. But then again, the mountain had been acting strange lately, as if it was keeping secrets. My name is Nathan Phillips, and this is the story of how I became the guardian of something ancient and powerful. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about our world. I remember that morning clearly. It was a cold October day, and the mountain peak was covered in fresh snow that glowed pink in the sunrise. I was doing my usual rounds, checking on climbers and making sure everyone was safe. That's my job, keeping people safe. I couldn't save my little girl Sarah 2 years ago when cancer took her, but at least up here on the mountain, I could protect others. The first weird thing I noticed was the silence. Usually the mountain is full of life, birds singing, small animals scurrying around, wind in the trees. But that morning, everything was quiet, dead quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I reached the first checkpoint where my partner Tom usually meets me. He wasn't there. His radio was silent too. That's when I saw them. A group of deer lying in the snow. At first I thought they were dead, but when I got closer I realized they were just sleeping, all of them, in the middle of the day, in the open. My grandfather was Native American, and he used to tell me stories about the mountain spirits. He said they could make animals sleep, control the weather, and speak to people in their minds. I always thought they were just stories to keep kids from wandering too far into the wilderness. Now, I wasn't so sure. I tried calling Tom again on the radio. Static. Just static, and a weird humming sound that made my head feel fuzzy. Then I heard it. A sound like someone whispering my name, but not with their voice. It was like the words were appearing directly in my mind. Nathan. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the morning mist. Nobody was there, but I could feel eyes on me. Lots of eyes. And somewhere up in the clouds, those strange blue lights were getting brighter. The rescue center called. 3 climbers had gone missing near the glacier caves. As I headed up to search for them, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mountain was watching me, waiting for something. And whatever was happening, it was just the beginning. I've seen a lot of strange things in my years on this mountain, but nothing prepared me for what I was about to discover. The truth about Mount Rainier, about the beings that live deep within it, and about my own destiny. This is my story, and I swear every word of it is true. Even if you might wish it wasn't. I found the first missing climber's backpack near Echo Rock. It was just sitting there in the snow, no footprints around it, like it had fallen from the sky. Inside, everything was perfectly packed. Water, bottles still full, granola bars untouched, phone with a full battery. It didn't make sense. When people get lost, they use their supplies. They don't just disappear. The blue lights kept showing up every night now, dancing between the clouds. Other rangers saw them too, but everyone had different explanations. Northern lights, they said. Weather balloons, aircraft. But I knew better. Northern lights aren't blue, and planes don't move like that. Then the headaches started. Small ones at first, like a gentle pressure behind my eyes. but they got worse when I went near certain parts of the mountain, especially the old caves, the ones my grandfather said were sacred to our people. Tom got them too. "It's like someone's trying to talk to me," Tom said one morning, rubbing his temples. "In my dreams, I keep seeing these tall figures in the mist. They want something from us, Nathan." I knew what he meant. I'd been having the same dreams. More hikers went missing. Always in the same areas. Always without a trace. The weird thing was, we'd find their camps exactly as they'd left them. Coffee still warm in their cups. Sleeping bags still zipped up from the inside, like they'd just gotten up and walked away. The animals kept acting strange too. We found a whole herd of elk sleeping near Crystal Lake, standing up, their eyes half open but completely still. When we tried to wake them, they wouldn't move. The local vet couldn't explain it. She took blood samples, but everything came back normal. Weather patterns changed too. Clouds would form in perfect circles above certain parts of the mountain. Snow would fall in one small area while everywhere else was clear. My weather radar went crazy, showing impossible temperature changes and pressure systems that shouldn't exist. One evening I was checking the cave systems near Paradise Point when my compass started spinning in circles. My phone died too, even though I'd just charged it. That's when I felt it again. That presence in my mind, stronger this time. "Nathan, protect, coming." The voice was clearer now, less like a whisper and more like a thought that wasn't mine. My head felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Through watery eyes, I saw something move in the shadows of the cave entrance. Something tall. Something that shouldn't exist. I turned on my flashlight, but it flickered and died. In the darkness, I saw two blue lights, just like the ones in the sky, but closer, much closer. They were eyes. Tom's voice crackled through my radio, making me jump. "Nathan, you need to get to the north face right now. You need to see this." I don't know how to explain it. Just come, please." His voice sounded wrong. Scared, but also different somehow. Like he wasn't quite himself anymore. As I headed toward the north face, the sky turned a weird purple color, and the air felt heavy, like right before a big storm. But this wasn't any normal storm coming. Deep in my gut, I knew something bigger was happening. Something that all these strange events were building up to. And whatever it was, it wanted me to be there when it happened. I checked my gun. Not that I thought it would help against whatever was out there, but its familiar weight on my hip made me feel a little better as I walked into what might be the biggest mistake, or the most important moment of my life. The north face was completely dark when I got there, even though it was only 6 p.m. The clouds had gathered so thick it looked like midnight. My flashlight beam barely cut through the darkness, and the air felt thick, like trying to breathe underwater. "Tom," I called out. My voice sounded small against the mountain's silence. "Tom, where are you?" That's when I saw it. At first I thought it was a shadow or maybe a weirdly shaped rock, but then it moved, and stood up, and up, and up. It was huge, like two tall men standing on each other's shoulders. But that wasn't the scariest part. Its eyes were glowing blue, just like the lights in the sky. The same lights I'd seen in the cave. They looked right into mine, and suddenly, my head felt like it was full of static. "Nathan Phillips." The voice wasn't in my ears. It was in my head, clear as day. "We have waited for one like you." I tried to back away, but my legs wouldn't move. Not because I was scared. Okay, maybe I was a little scared. But because something was holding me in place, like invisible hands. "Where's Tom?" I managed to ask. "Your friend is changing. He has been chosen as you have been chosen." Finally, I saw Tom. He was lying on the ground nearby, perfectly still, like the sleeping animals we'd found. But his eyes were open, and they had a faint blue glow to them. "What did you do to him?" I demanded, finding my courage. "We showed him the truth, about this mountain, about us, about what is coming." The creature stepped closer. In the dim light, I could see it better now. It looked almost human, but not quite. Skin was rough like tree bark, and it had long, silver-white hair that moved in a wind I couldn't feel. "We are the Guardians," it continued. We have lived within this mountain since before your kind learned to make fire. We protect something ancient, something powerful, something that must not fall into the wrong hands." My head was spinning with questions, but before I could ask any of them, the creature raised its hand. The air around us started to shimmer like heat waves on a hot road. Suddenly, the rock face behind it disappeared, just vanished, revealing a tunnel that definitely wasn't on any of my maps. "Come," it said. "There is much you need to see." I looked at Tom again. He was breathing, but it was slow, like he was in a deep sleep. Will he be okay? He is becoming one of us. The process cannot be stopped now, but you have a choice to make. Everything in my ranger training told me to run, to call for backup, to do anything except follow this impossible creature into a magical tunnel in the mountain. But then I remembered my grandfather's stories, about the mountain spirits, about chosen ones, about destiny. "If I come with you," I said, "will you tell me what happened to the missing hikers?" The creature's blue eyes seemed to glow brighter. "We will show you everything, Nathan Phillips, including why your daughter's spirit led us to choose you." My heart stopped. "Sarah? What do you know about Sarah?" "Follow and understand." The tunnel seemed to glow with a soft blue light, just like the creature's eyes. As I stepped inside, I felt the temperature drop. The air smelled ancient, like old books and stone. Behind me, I heard Tom take a deep breath, like someone waking up from a long sleep. I've seen a lot of crazy things in my life, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found in that tunnel, or for the choice I would have to make once I learned the truth about Mount Rainier's secret heart. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right decision that day. But then I remember Sarah's smile, and I know that everything happens for a reason, even the things we can't explain. The creature started walking deeper into the tunnel, and I followed. Each step took me further from the world I knew, and closer, to a truth that would change everything. The real question was I ready for what I was about to learn? Looking back now, I realize that moment was my last chance to turn around, to go back to my normal life. But when you've spent your whole life looking for answers, sometimes you have to be brave enough to follow them, no matter where they lead, even if they lead into the heart of a mountain, following a creature that shouldn't exist. The tunnel opened into something I never expected to find inside Mount Rainier, a city, an ancient city carved right into the rock, with buildings taller than trees and streets that glowed with that same soft blue light. It looked older than anything I'd ever seen, but somehow everything seemed alive, humming with energy. But I didn't have much time to take it all in. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. "Ranger Phillips, this is Deputy Director Stevens. We've got 3 helicopters heading your way. Stay where you are. I repeat, stay where you are." The government was coming. Of course they were. They must have been tracking all the strange things happening on the mountain. The tall creature, who told me to call it Keeper, turned to me. "They cannot find this place, not yet. The time isn't right." "What do you mean? What's really going on here?" I asked, my head starting to pound again. That's when I saw them, the missing hikers. They were walking around the ancient city, but something was different about them. Their eyes had that same blue glow as Tom's, and they moved like they were in a dream. "They're safe," Keeper said, reading my thoughts. "They were chosen to help prepare." "Prepare for what?" Instead of answering, Keeper led me to a wall covered in carvings. They showed pictures of stars, mountains, and what looked like giant waves of energy coming from the sky. As I looked at them, they started to move, like a movie playing on the rock. "Every 1,000 years, Keeper said, something comes from beyond the stars, something that could destroy everything. We were put here to protect Earth when it arrives." It pointed to a carving of what looked like a massive storm. "It's coming again, soon." My head felt like it was splitting open, but now I understood why. The beings weren't trying to hurt us. They were trying to share their knowledge, show us what was coming. Suddenly, Tom appeared beside me. He looked different, taller, his skin slightly gray, his eyes that brilliant blue. But he was still Tom. "It's amazing, Nathan," he said, but his voice echoed in my head instead of my ears. "They've shown me everything. The truth about the Universe, about why we're here, about Sarah. Sarah? What about Sarah? She's here, Nathan, not alive like we are. But her spirit, they can feel it. That's why they chose you. People with great loss in their hearts. They're the ones strong enough to handle the change. The sound of helicopters grew louder outside. Keeper looked worried, if you can call it that on a face so strange. They're coming with machines, it said. Machines that could detect us, harm us, we must hide the city. I felt a pull in my mind, like someone trying to take control. I fought it. What are you doing to me? Showing you how to help, Tom said. Let it in, Nathan. It doesn't hurt once you stop fighting. The helicopters were getting closer. I could feel the beings trying to pull me into their mind link, show me their memories, their knowledge. It felt like my head would explode. That's when I saw her, Sarah. Not like a ghost, more like a memory made real. She was standing among the beings, smiling that smile I missed so much. She reached out her hand. But before I could take it, the first helicopter spotlight hit the mountainside. The beings moved fast, raising their hands. I felt power surge through the air as they created some kind of invisible shield around the city. Nathan, Tom said urgently, you have to choose, now. Help us hide the city, or let them find it, but if they find it, they'll try to use its power, and they don't understand what's really coming. The helicopters were right above us now. My radio was going crazy with voices giving orders. The government teams would be here any minute. I looked at Sarah's spirit one more time, then at Tom, then at the ancient city that held secrets about saving the world. I had to make a choice, and I had about 30 seconds to make it. Sometimes, the biggest moments in your life come down to a single decision. This was mine, and whatever I chose, there would be no going back to the way things were before. The helicopters landed. Footsteps were coming down the tunnel. Time was up. Time seemed to freeze as I made my decision. I closed my eyes, stopped, fighting the pressure in my head, and let the beings show me everything. It hit me like a tidal wave. I saw it all, the truth they'd been protecting for thousands of years. A massive wave of energy that comes from deep space, something that could wipe out all life on Earth. I saw how it had happened before, how the beings had used their powers to shield our planet, working from inside mountains all around the world. But this time was different. This time the wave was bigger. We need more help, Keeper's voice echoed in my mind. More guardians. That's why we chose you, and Tom and the others. Human guardians who understand both worlds. Through the mind link, I saw the missing hikers. They weren't victims, they were volunteers. Each one had been chosen because they had known great loss like me. That pain had made them strong enough to handle the change. The government teams were getting closer. I could hear their boots in the tunnel, their voices echoing off the walls. They had machines, sensors, weapons. If they find this place, Tom said, they'll try to use its power as a weapon. They won't understand it's needed for something more important. Sarah's spirit floated closer to me. Even though she wasn't really there, I could almost smell her favorite strawberry shampoo. She didn't speak, but in my mind, I felt her love, her trust, her belief in me. That's when I understood. Something else. The beings hadn't just chosen me because of my loss. They'd chosen me because Sarah's spirit had led them to me. She'd been watching over me all this time, and now she was helping me find my true purpose. The first government agents appeared at the tunnel entrance. They had weird-looking machines that beeped and flashed. Scientists in white coats followed them, their eyes going wide as they saw the ancient city. I knew what I had to do. I'll help you, I said to Keeper. Show me how. The being touched my forehead with one long finger. Suddenly I knew exactly what to do, like I'd known it all my life. I raised my hands along with Tom and the others. Energy flowed through me, cool and warm at the same time. The air shimmered like a giant bubble forming around the city. The government teams froze in their tracks. What's happening? One of them shouted. Where did they go? We hadn't gone anywhere. We'd just hidden. The city behind what the beings called a veil. Normal humans couldn't see through it. They'd only see what they expected to see, empty cave walls. But that was just the beginning. Now that I'd chosen to help, the beings showed me the rest of the plan. The wave of energy was coming in less than a month. We needed to prepare. Your old life ends here, Keeper said gently. But your new one, your true purpose, is just beginning. I looked at Sarah's spirit one last time before she faded away. She was smiling that proud smile she used to give me when I did something good. The agents and scientists wandered around, confused, their machines going haywire. Soon they'd leave, unable to find anything unusual. They'd write reports about magnetic disturbances and mass hallucinations. The mountain would keep its secrets, but my story wasn't over. It was about to get even stranger, because now I had to learn how to be something I never thought possible, a guardian of Earth itself, and we didn't have much time left to prepare. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Tom and the other guardians taught me how to use my new abilities. I learned to create force fields, to speak with my mind, and even to control small changes in the weather. It was like being a kid again, learning to ride a bike. Scary at first, then amazing once you got the hang of it. But we didn't have time to celebrate. The wave was coming. I still worked as a ranger on the surface, keeping my cover. But now I could see things others couldn't. The hidden doorways in the rocks, the energy fields protecting sacred places, the spirits of the mountain, including Sarah, watching over us as we prepared. Then one morning, the sky turned purple, just like it had that first strange day. But this time it didn't go away. It's starting, Tom said in my mind. Look, through our shared vision I could see it. A massive wave of energy rushing through space toward Earth. It looked like a giant aurora, but instead of beautiful, it was terrifying. Anything it touched would be destroyed. All around the world, other guardians like us were getting ready. Some in the Himalayas, others in the Andes, more in the Rockies. Every major mountain range had its protectors. We could feel them all through the mind link like a giant web of energy spreading across the planet. Places, everyone, Keeper announced, just like we practiced. We took our positions around the ancient city, forming a circle. The missing hikers, now fellow guardians, stood with us. Above ground, people were panicking about the strange sky, but they couldn't see what we saw. The wave hit the atmosphere. Everything electronic went crazy. Cars stopped working. Phones died. Power grids failed across the globe. Now, Keeper commanded. We all raised our hands together. Energy flowed from the mountain, through us, up into the sky. It was harder than anything I'd ever done, like trying to hold back an ocean with your bare hands. Through the mind link, I felt Sarah's spirit next to me, lending me strength. Tom stood on my other side, his transformed face intense with concentration. The wave crashed against our shield. The ground shook. Inside my head, it felt like 1,000 bells ringing at once. "Hold on," Tom shouted. "We're almost there. Just..." When I thought I couldn't take any more, something amazing happened. All the guardians around the world, thousands of us, connected at once. Our power combined into something bigger than all of us. The wave split apart like water around a rock, passing harmlessly into space. We'd done it. Earth was safe. As our shield faded, I watched the purple sky turn blue again. Below the mountain, people were coming out of their houses, looking confused but relieved. They'd never know how close they'd come to the end of everything. "So what happens now?" I asked Keeper. "Now you truly begin your work as a guardian," it said. "The wave will return in another 1,000 years. Until then, we protect the mountain and its secrets, and we prepare the next generation." And Sarah? As why? If answering my question, I felt her spirit brush against my mind one last time. Not goodbye, more like, see you later. She'd always be part of this place now, part of the mountain's magic. That was 5 years ago. I'm still a ranger, still protecting Mount Rainier, just in more ways than most people know about. Tom leads a new group of guardians in another part of the mountain. Sometimes hikers go missing, but only the ones who are chosen, the ones who are ready to learn the truth. The government teams still come around sometimes with their machines and questions. They never find anything. But sometimes, on cold nights when the moon is bright, People see strange blue lights dancing above the mountain. Those lights are us, the guardians, keeping watch, protecting our world from things most people couldn't imagine. And if you're ever hiking on Mount Rainier and feel like someone's watching you, well, maybe you're ready to learn the truth too. Just look for the blue lights. We'll be waiting. It was a quiet evening on Mount Rainier. Exactly the kind of evening that usually means something interesting is about to happen. I was right. My radio crackled. Ranger Phillips, we've got a lost hiker near Paradise Point. Young woman says she's been walking in circles for hours. On my way, I answered. But I already knew this wasn't a normal rescue. I could feel it. When I found her, she was sitting on a fallen log looking at a photo on her phone. Even before I got close, I could sense the sadness around her like a heavy blanket, just like the sadness I used to carry about Sarah. Ma'am? I'm Ranger Phillips. Are you okay? She looked up, wiping her eyes quickly. I'm fine. Just lost. And feeling stupid about it. She showed me the photo, her and an older woman both smiling. My mom, we used to hike here together. She passed away last month. I came to, I don't know, feel close to her again, I guess. That's when I saw the familiar blue glow reflecting in her eyes just for a second. She was chosen, just like I had been. What's your name? I asked. Jenny Martinez. Well, Jenny, would you believe me if I told you your mom led you here for a reason? She gave me a strange look. What do you mean? I sat down next to her on the log. Have you noticed anything weird lately? Lights in the sky? Dreams that feel too real? Getting headaches near certain parts of the mountain? Her eyes went wide. How did you know? I smiled. Because the same thing happened to me 5 years ago. And if you're ready, I have quite a story to tell you. Above us, the first stars were coming out. And among them, if you knew where to look, you could see the blue lights dancing, welcoming another guardian to our family. Some people say there's no such thing as magic in the real world. But I know better. Sometimes magic isn't about waving wands or saying special words. Sometimes it's about loss and love, and finding your true purpose in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about a mountain that's more than just a mountain, and the special people chosen to protect its secrets. So, Jenny, I said, as the blue lights grew brighter, would you like to learn the truth about Mount Rainier? She nodded. Slowly, and I could see in her eyes that same mix of fear and wonder I'd felt 5 years ago. Another guardian's journey was about to begin, and somewhere, I knew Sarah was smiling.